My name's Sian Bayne. I work in the School of Education at the University of Edinburgh, and I'm also leading the research, learning and engagement strand of the Artist Rooms partnership. So what I want to talk about is multimodal profusion, which is what's in the programme, but I want to talk about it particularly in the context of MOOCs, because MOOCs are a fairly hot topic and a good indication of a future trend in education, and perhaps something that the higher education sector can bring to gallery education in terms of sharing knowledge. So what I would like to do is two things in my 15 minutes. One is to say a little bit about massive open online courses, MOOCs, at Edinburgh, and what we're doing with MOOCs, and what we know about how to make a MOOC successful and who our MOOC users are. I'm then going to look at this notion of multimodal profusion, which ties into a lot of what people have been talking about in terms of creativity and education opening up creative spaces for people to learn new kinds of creative and multimodal literacies. So that's the focus in the second half. Okay, so is this working? Can you hear me all right? Yeah? Okay, so the University of Edinburgh was the first university in the UK to start running MOOCs. And our Vice-Chancellor signed a deal with Coursera, the US-based MOOC provider, back in July 2012. And we started offering our first MOOCs about this time last year, and we ran 6 MOOCs first off across the disciplines, from philosophy to artificial intelligence. The one I was involved with is the top left one there, e-learning and digital cultures, which is the one I'll talk a bit more about in a minute. So in that first phase of our first 6 MOOCs, we had over 300,000 people sign up. So we now have, those 6 MOOCs are still running. We have another 6 MOOCs with Coursera being developed, one of which is the Warhol MOOC, which you can see here, which will launch in April of this year. And this is the first MOOC to be a partnership between a university and galleries, the Artist Rooms partnership in this instance, and it will run through Coursera. So you might want to sign up to that one. I think it starts on April the 21st. We also have a partnership with FutureLearn, and we're running a MOOC at the moment on the Higgs boson, sort of trying to tap into some of that public interest around when Higgs got the Nobel Prize a couple of months back. So what I'm going to do now, this is lulling you with a nice, beautiful picture of Edinburgh looking lovely before I hit you with some really ugly graphs. Just to give you a really quick overview of for me, this is really about what MOOCs offer us, and what for me is unique and new and exciting about MOOCs is just the sheer scale of them, the massiveness of the massive open online course. So this is the number of enrolments that we had across our 6 MOOCs. You can see our biggest one was around 100,000 people signed up. Even the smallest one was 23,000, which is only a few thousand less than all the undergraduate and postgraduate students within Edinburgh University on campus. So it's a huge deal. People always ask about engagement level across MOOCs, and didn't you have massive dropout and so on? Yes, we did. But really, we don't really need to look at the number of people who enrolled. We need to look at the number of people who accessed the course and were active. So within the Edinburgh MOOCs, we know that about a third of the people who signed up became actually active users of those MOOCs and active learners. And then within that lot, we had a good percentage complete in the sense that they took the final assignments. That's a fairly typical pattern of engagement within MOOCs. We know that on our MOOCs we had a lot of people from the US, which I guess is a kind of an advantage of signing up to a MOOC provider like Coursera, which is going to give you access to a big American market, if you want to call it that. I thought you might be interested to see what we know about the demographic of people on our MOOCs. I was quite surprised by this because the general demographic was quite young. The dominant age range was 25 to 34, and I was surprised. I thought there would be more older people. So perhaps we need to do some work around kind of pushing MOOCs out to that demographic, and also, in the context of artist rooms, I think we'd want to look at pushing the Warhol MOOC out to the under 18s as well, sort of trying to bring in more of that demographic. So there's work to do. In particular, there's work to do in terms of of the level of education of the people that were taking these first round of Edinburgh MOOCs. Most people had a postgraduate degree. The vast majority of people had some kind of degree. We were really tapping into a group of people who were lifelong learners rather than widening participation. interesting to see how these figures change as MOOCs become more mainstream. Okay, so that's just a very quick overview of what we know about our MOOCs and what they were kind of achieving in that sense. But I want to do now is focus in on a particular MOOC and talk a bit about how that went. And the one I'm going to talk about is this one that I ran with my colleagues called E-Learning and Digital Cultures. So I'm going to talk about it in the context of this notion of multimodal profusion. Multimodality, I've stuck up a definition here from Jeff Bazima. It's about the interdisciplinary approach that understands communication as being about more than language, which I guess is not going to take people that work with the kind of visual and performance arts by surprise, but those of us who are in the social sciences, this is a big deal. So, yeah, for me, nothing illustrates this better than the University of Harvard logo, which I just love. It kind of encapsulates everything about the way in which you understand academic knowledge to be represented through the printed word in the bound book as representing kind of truth and authority of academic knowledge and representation. And when we take learning online, we kind of see a shift from that kind of dominance of the print text to kind of multimodal mashups. So what you can see here is an image that one of our MOOC participants created as part of the course. It's a collage, if you like, and a kind of representation of the craziness of the MOOC space in terms of its multimedia and social media mix, about which I will say a bit more in a minute. So the E-Learning and Digital Cultures MOOC, the EDC MOOC, was a tweet that went out that as we opened it for the second time with about 20,000 participants. The first time we ran it, we had about 40,000 people sign up. It's a big MOOC on big ideas with a participatory flavour. It's a MOOC, it's not about how to do e-learning, it's how to look at e-learning through a particular lens of digital culture. And if anyone, I'm sure many people here have done MOOCs and have looked at Coursera MOOCs, and you will probably know that the dominant kind of design of MOOCs is video lecture, followed by perhaps an interactive quiz, a multiple choice quiz, maybe a discussion forum. That was something we set out deliberately not to do with this MOOC. Even though it was a Coursera MOOC, we wanted it to be more participatory, more collaborative, more open. So we didn't make videos. We curated the content of the MOOC. So we didn't create anything new the first time we ran the MOOC. We pieced together artifacts from the public web, open access journal articles, web essays. When in the case of popular cultures, we pieced together short films from Vimeo and YouTube, and that became the content of the MOOC. So we divided the MOOC into two kind of main blocks. The first one was looking at utopias and dystopias in cyberculture and popular culture. The second was looking at humanism and post-humanism and its kind of links with educational futures. So we pieced together all this stuff. We ran live Google Hangouts at the end of every week. Terrifying. And we encouraged our participants to blog, and we aggregated these blogs into a single stream, which we pulled into the Coursera site. So that's what we did in terms of making content. But as one of our participants kind of tweeted, actually this MOOC wasn't really about the content, it was about the community that formed around this content. So just some quick stats of what happened when this MOOC went live. In fact, before it went live, we had a kind of explosion of activity within social media. Thousands of people in the student-run Facebook and G+ groups. As the teaching team, we had nothing to do with those groups. They were set up by MOOC participants and run and organised by MOOC participants. The EDC MOOC Twitter hashtag was incredibly active. People set up Twitter chat sessions. There was an English version. There was also a chat in Spanish that ran every week. There were over 1,000 blogs being pulled into the EDC MOOC news aggregation, and there was a whole load of activity also happening within, YouTube and Vimeo and the other social sites that we were using. So it was a real explosion of activity, which was very exciting for us as teachers, but quite overwhelming, I think, both for us as teachers and for a lot of the participants. But to think about this notion of multimodal profusion, we wanted people on this MOOC to think about representing academic knowledge differently from the usual ways, which are the kind of textual representations. We wanted people to make images and to make alternative kinds of representations. So we did this in a few ways. One thing we did was to run an image competition halfway through the MOOC, we got people to make an image about some aspect of the MOOC content that they'd been looking at, and then they had to put it up into Flickr, and we used Flickr interestingness to rate those images, and there were prizes for the top 5. So some people made images which represented something, not entirely positive, this one, is it? That kind of represented something of the overwhelmingness of being involved with this kind of massive social media activity. Others made images which were explicitly, reflecting on the content. We were talking a lot about digital culture and analog culture, and so some people did some playing around with those ideas. Others did some work around notions of the post-human. This is one of my favourites. A lot of people made images which were about just the sheer addictiveness of studying a MOOC like this. So Kathy Maelli's was about studying the MOOC on the toilet. And Angela Towndrow's, it says at the top, yes, she's home, she's just a bit busy with EDC MOOC. There was a lot of commentary like this. People just couldn't break away. So the other thing that we did in terms of encouraging this kind of alternative approach to thinking creatively about content was for the assessment for the MOOC. We asked people to create a digital artifact, post it in some kind of social space, and then that was peer assessed. So we had over 2,000 of these artifacts submitted. The Coursera site is quite good at managing the peer assessment process. It will send out assignments to 2 or 3 peers. Those peers write feedback and give a mark, which the system aggregates and feeds back to the person who's submitted it. So that actually worked fairly well. And we had some absolutely fantastic things that were sent in. I'll just show you a couple. Is the sound on? Can I? Yeah. Okay, the first one I'll show you is one person submitted an animation that he made on the basis of the words circulating within one of the Saturday night Twitter chats about this MOOC, the words that people were using to describe the experience of studying it. So I'll show you that one. I don't think the sound's on.
Relaxing, short, spontaneous, spur of the moment, stimulating, strange, super quick, superficial, unclear, useful, vibrant, worldly.
Yeah, so that kind of summed it up. Then there were others which were much more meditative. I like this one. I won't show you all of it, but it's some lovely sketches on what it means to be a kind of digital teacher. A narrative. There actually isn't one for this, it's just a series of sketches. It's a really nice piece of work. I'll show you a little bit of one last one before I run out of time.
One dial please for me.
It's a video spoof.
We've had the internet since 1992, and now I never have a sense of what to do, because we're all just nodes connecting me and you. We wonder if all information should be free, and with our education, how tech could it be, if our devices might change our biology. I'll get my macro and go to Google. Digital life has changed who we are.
Anyway, it goes on. So we had a whole load of these artifacts were submitted, and they were, some were better than others, but it was kind of a deluge of exciting stuff that came through. So I only have about a minute left, so I've got this pie chart up here just to kind of preface what's going to come next by saying people basically really enjoyed our MOOC. Over 80% of them really thought it was good or better. But I thought I would share a bit of this feedback which we got on the MOOC, which was posted on the Course Talk site, which is kind of TripAdvisor for MOOCs. I don't know if you've seen it. This guy, Wilco, gave us absolutely the lowest possible score you could get. And he says, well, you can read it. He compares the MOOC to the smuggling of a can of sardines into a museum and the placing of it upon a pedestal. This course is basically such a can of sardines. A very nice course for those who want to practice art appreciation skills or blog about deep transformative experiences. And we were kind of a bit bemused when we got this because we were like, is this bad? You know, so I think some people going into a Coursera MOOC don't expect to have this kind of educational experience. They expect to be doing some kind of different learning experience, which is much more driven by the teacher than this one was. Just to kind of counter that a little bit, we had a lot of very good feedback as well. This person is saying, in particular, the kind of social networking that participants did was made this one of the most fabulous learning experiences ever to be had online. So we were happy with that. Just going to end very quickly by summarising what I think are some of the key things about running a MOOC, which might be interesting for gallery education in particular. I think a MOOC creates a safe, relatively low-stakes space in which to give people a chance to create and represent their learning beyond text. I think the massiveness of MOOCs is hugely exciting, and it gives very, very large numbers of people the chance to cohere and group together around a passion, which was very much what was happening on this MOOC. It's fun for teachers because this whole, what I've called the structure chaos choreography, which actually now sounds a bit pretentious, but I mean that it was really exciting working across a very constrained site like Coursera and the multiple social spaces that were kind of intersecting with that. The other thing which is really important is that these are social groupings that persist. So the Facebook group, the G+ group, the Twitter hashtag, all of those still run. New people are still joining those groups all the time, even after the MOOC is finished. New things have happened since the MOOC is finished, like people are running, there's an online book group where people meet and read texts around the themes of the course online every week. So it's still happening. And then, of course, there's the massive reach. And on that, I'll finish. Thank you.